Has feminism destroyed the West? That was a topic on a recent debate on Culture War Live with Tim Pool. And in one corner, we had defending feminism, the influencers Not So Erudite, I hope I pronounced that correctly, aka Kyla, and comedian Kat Timpf from Live with Gutfeld on Fox News. You may be familiar. Now, unfortunately, the side against feminism, saying that it has destroyed the West, was represented by Myron Gaines from the very popular Fresh and Fit podcast. And guys, Tim Pool could not have chosen a worse representative to be an opponent of feminism if he was paid to do so. It was so bad that I have to break down this debate and refute both sides of this madness to give you the real, true, and of course, biblical answers to this question. And I brought a couple friends along to help me do just that. Fellas, thank you for joining me tonight.
What's happening, brother?
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, go ahead and introduce yourself. I got with me Joel Settecase from the Think Institute and Alexx XXX Medeiros on the podcast. Both brothers from the Hammer and Anvil Society. We'll tell you about that. Joel, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the good folks at home.
Yes, I'm the president of the Think Institute. We're a Christian teaching and outreach organization aimed at helping Christian men build a legacy where you, your kids, and your wife will be able to confidently answer all the world's objections straight from the Bible and see Jesus change lives as you share your faith. So our goal is to help you build a worldview legacy in your home, in your workplace, in your local area, in your church. That's what we do. And then what you just mentioned is the Hammer and Anvil Society, which is our men's fellowship. It's a semi-secretive society. Some of the things that we do are public, and then some of the things that we do are in smoky-filled rooms where no female is allowed within 100 feet. And we talk about how to retake the world for patriarchy. So that's what I'm about.
Yes, the real patriarchist. That's a word.
Real stuff,
which is why I had you here to help me break this down. Alexx, tell the good folks at home what you're about.
Hi, my name is Alexx, aka WiFiGospel. You can find me on all the social medias, just simply at WiFiGospel. You might have seen me on platforms like Modern Day Debate or The Raging Tomato. I do a lot of the Is God Real Though debates, and a little bit of pop culture reactions and commentary on stuff like that. And I'm souped to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to diving right in.
Hey, I'm souped too. I'm souped. Is that a thing?
See, that's why we had Alexx. All right. And not only is he a master debater, but he knows what all the young kids are talking about. He knows the slang. Me and Joel, we're old folks. We're out of touch with society.
Yeah.
So
That's literally the first time I've ever heard that.
To be fair, it's more of a 90s term, but I'm bringing it back single-handedly.
I thought that was stoked, man. I was saying the wrong thing.
Fellas, let's jump right into it. Our first clip that we are going to play here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So in this first clip, they are going to discuss, and we're going to get our first glimpse of Myron's terrible debate skills, where he talks about how feminism has ruined dating.
Problems that have come from feminism, and it's a multi-pronged issue depending on whichever section you want to go.
Name one.
I mean, we can start with dating, right? So these bitches are too entitled, if I'm going to be honest. Their expectations are far too high for what they bring to the table. They're fairly delusional thanks to, social media, dating apps, etc., where, simps are blowing smoke up their ass all the time. And what's happened is women have a very unrealistic standard on what they think they deserve versus what's out there. And if they do find that guy, they think that guy should kind of bend to their women. The reality is it doesn't work that way.
Wait, actually, one thing.
So, fellas, first of all, he is not wrong that feminism has ruined dating. I think we can all agree that it has played its role, even if we don't think that is the core thing that has destroyed dating among young men. But I don't think it's for the reasons necessarily that he's saying. These blanks, we're going to edit that out, are too entitled. And I just don't think putting the blame squarely on women's shoulders in this situation is warranted, nor is it biblical. I think the real problem with dating is that our society has come so far away from God. Like America loves its sin so much, right? That this is what has ruined the sexual revolution and things like this that have just ruined what is so sacred that God created for us.
Yeah, it's definitely a worldview issue. Feminism is a symptom, and there's no question that feminism, as you said, Jeremiah, feminism is very detrimental. It's corrosive. It's acidic towards the relationship between men and women, the way that we are designed to interact. I mean, feminism takes biblical natural femininity and just turns it inside out. And, a human being walking around with all their insides on the outside, that's not a pretty sight. That's not a healthy sight. And that's not a person who's going to survive for long. So we've got to get things back in where they're supposed to be. But that's a symptom of the problem. The greater problem is worldview. And as a society gets further and further away from biblical Christianity, God's own worldview, you're going to start to see things like feminism crop up. And you're going to see, interestingly enough, you're going to see feminism become worse and worse. And this goes for any ideology that you adopt when you move away from biblical Christianity. You're going to see it. Progress is not the right word, even though they call themselves progressives. You're going to see it digress. You're going to see it regress. And that is exactly what you see. Christianity was taken out of the public sphere about 120 years ago, right around the end of the 19th century is when it really became a lot more of a private matter, where rather than being the public discourse, the public language that people were speaking out in the public square, it became a lot more about what's going on in your heart, in your head, in your pew, within the church, what happens in Sunday school, and less about the public sphere. Well, it wasn't long after that first wave feminism hit. And then what did we see? Did feminism stop with the women's suffrage? No, of course not. We had second wave feminism in the 60s, third wave feminism in the 80s and 90s. And now we're in something called fourth wave feminism, in which the snake has pretty much devoured its own body and is now about to devour its own head. You've got feminism that's actually anti-women and very pro-trans, which is another way of saying pro-delusional men. So just exactly what you would expect if you abandon the Christian worldview is what's happening. And so, has feminism ruined dating? In a sense, yes, but feminism is also a symptom of a greater disease, is how I see it.
Yeah. Alexx, what are you seeing amongst the younger folks? This whole thing he's talking about entitlement. Are women walking around more? Because I remember when I was dating, I really didn't get a sense that anybody was really walking around with like an entitlement when it came to dating. Is that prevalent now? Is that a thing?
Well, I am coming up on my 9th anniversary in a couple of weeks here. Nice. So I have been out of the dating game for a while, and I'm only 29. So I've been married majority of my life and all of my adult life pretty much. But I do have a lot of younger siblings. And one big thing that I see among them is, yes, dating just to have fun, right? A lot of people do that, and not dating for marriage, which is going to cause all sorts of issues. But also a big thing that I see is just they don't want kids. So it's like, if it's almost like, how can you date for marriage if you don't even want kids? And I'm hoping that their minds will change down the road. But just to hit on a little hot take on Myron's point, if you get married at 18, 19, or 20 years old, there's no time for these women to develop unrealistic expectations, right? But if you have this worldview of, I'm just going to play the field and not get married until I'm 40 because I'm a guy and my thing still works at 40 and I can still have a baby, unlike you 40-year-old woman, right? That's kind of a big point he makes. Then, I guess you can't do that. But if you get married young, there's no unrealistic expectations that these women who you're courting can develop.
That's a really good point. And I think historically, well, I'd have to go back and check on this, but as a nation gets more prosperous, you do see later and later marriages. And oftentimes when a nation gets more prosperous, you also see a decreasing influence of the Christian worldview. And so we'd have to debate whether or not that's causation or whether that's correlation. But I do know, I'm part of a very healthy church, and we've got couples marrying in their early 20s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's not unheard of to have couples walking around who are barely into their 30s who already have multiple children and are raising what would be considered large families.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the security of the community. It's a church where a lot of families are very active, multi-generational. We're talking grandparents and parents and then children, and everybody's going to church together. So there's a lot of security there. But then there's also, as you said, there's not really time to develop these false expectations. And, they're not just drinking in the feminist Kool-Aid saying, okay, well, the most important thing is that I get as much education as I can, make as much money as I can, get the nicest house, get all this stuff. And then, you're stuck in your 40s and you haven't had kids yet. So I think that the two go hand in hand. Again, I think it's a worldview issue.
Right. Of course. And then, of course, here in this next clip, Myron, as if he didn't start off bad enough, he's going to kind of take this idea of dating and lead to another terrible point. Again, Tim Pool, you got three brothers right here that would have been happy to have been on that stage to give the correct position on this. But let's see what Myron had to say about education here.
Person.
Well, I think Kat makes actually a good point, though, Myron. Like, is it that bad if a girl has a job and a college education? Like, a driven woman, let's say she's driven to do more than just be a mom. Like, why is that demonized, I guess, in your opinion?
Well, look, I don't have a problem with women, aspiring to go to school and everything else like that. My thing is, I think we just need to be honest with them. If you're going to go ahead and pursue a career and higher education, your chances of finding a man are going to drop off precipitously because your standards go up as you increase your income, your status. Because women are hypergamous, they're not like us. When we get status and money, our standards stay fairly the same, or we just want a hotter girl. But when women increase their status, they want a guy on their level, financially, mentally, etc. So we just need to be honest with women: is the more successful you become, the likelihood of you finding a guy drop off.
There's a really that was not the case for me. I'm actually more successful than you are, Myron.
Oh, wow.
And then she gets him with that. Now, here's the problem I have with this view, gentlemen, is that my standards hasn't really changed, because when I'm let me put it this way. Okay, so the more successful I become, the more educated I had become as I moved up. He's kind of right in the sense that my standards didn't change. It wasn't necessarily that because I got a better job now, I deserve a more attractive woman, because I realized early on that that's surface level stuff, and that means hardly anything at all. When I refined my standards did become refined to be like, okay, I want a woman who knows Jesus. I want a woman who isn't, her idea of good Saturday night isn't at the club in a short dress in high heels and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? So I think he was like kind of on the right track there, but still completely missed the mark. What do you guys think?
I work with a lot of women who are well into their careers, right? And some of them age gracefully and some of them don't.
Sure.
And as they're looking for men, it is harder. Although I think as men get older, and women, you tend to date in your age usually, right? And your standards do drop, right? I mean, I also work with a bunch of guys who are always pointing out other women to me, and especially the older guys, they'll just look at anything, right? They get excited over everything. But beauty fades. We all know that. So unless you're going to be 50 years old dating a 20-year-old for various reasons, if you're just dating for beauty standards, you're going to have to sit there one day, old and gray, across the way from someone who's also old and gray, and still love them. Yep. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of problems.
There's a trade-off when you get married. I talked to Elisa about this. There's a trade-off when you get married. When a couple's young, let's say in their 20s, and they get married, she is she's young, she's beautiful, she's vibrant. She can marry any guy that she wants. She could marry the most successful man in the world. She could pick some 45-year-old, some 50-year-old, and who's just a millionaire, and she could marry him and she could make him very happy. But she doesn't do that. She chooses the young man, the man with the potential, because she sees the potential, because she sees that he's driven, because she sees that he's a godly man. He's got responsibility. He's got the qualities that she wants to see. Maybe he's I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that women, find attractive. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that. I actually have a list because I teach this to my son. I'm teaching my son about how to be attractive. That's part of becoming a man. And I don't just mean physically, but so she says, I'm going to marry you now, even though you're not the most attractive you'll ever be. Okay. And as you age and you get more successful, I'm here with you in the long haul. But then the trade-off is this: he's marrying her when she is just, her fertility is at its highest, and she can bear him all these babies, and she's stylish, and she's vivacious and all this stuff. But guess what? She's going to have multiple kids, and she might lose her figure, and she might. And I'm not describing my own wife here right now. She still looks unbelievable. Believe me, But here's the point, though. The trade-off is, this is the compact. This is the covenant. As we grow older, whether you get more attractive or less attractive, I'm with you and only you. So my standard is going to change, and it's going to adapt to whatever you are, And so does that mean that we just let ourselves go? No, I hope not. I mean, my wife and I both work out, but even if we didn't, we are our own type. We're each other's type because that's who we're married to. And so I think this is another thing that comes out of the biblical worldview is the Bible says, take pleasure, delight in the wife of your youth. And that's something that is applicable when you're young. And then when you're old, your wife is still the wife of your youth. She's the one that you married when you were very young and when she was very young. And you're committed, man. It doesn't matter what, come hell or high water. She could turn into, she could age like fine wine. She could age like milk. It doesn't matter. She's the one that the Lord's given you. And so that's who you're with now. Thinking
beyond physical traits, though, what about your wife becomes more successful than you?
Oh yeah.
Does that change?
Deal breaker.
I don't think it. What? But to be honest with the folks at home and you guys as well, my wife is more successful than me, but somehow that didn't really change anything about our relationship, because at the front of that relationship, and the reason we're still married despite everything we've been through, is Christ. Christ is at the front. So I think if he's at the front, what happens when they have kids, maybe you get a beer belly, whatever. I think all that other stuff takes a way back seat when Christ is at the front.
Right. What are you living for?
Right. Exactly.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if I'm living for pleasure, then I want the money. I want multiple women, perhaps, especially if I can get away with it and still have the family at home, right? Have both sides of the coin. Myron, for example, had a woman who he was courting, and he would brag all over the internet about how he gets to mess around all the time and she gets to stay at home and not talk to anybody else but him. And that turned out to not be so true, but that's another story for another time.
Wow.
So his own worldview bit him in the butt then.
Okay, so this whole idea of hypergamy, it is something that we do need to take into consideration. And I don't mean we, I mean, we're three happily married men. And even on the days when the marriage isn't as happy, we're still happily married. You understand? Like, marriage is for life. The only thing that's going to separate my wife and me is one of us is going to die. And I just hope that it's me first. But because living without her would totally suck. I would not want to do that. But
you got a really good life insurance policy.
And speaking of which, I have to increase mine now that we're having this conversation. But so the point is, hypergamy for a young guy who is dating or in the dating world, he does need to consider this. And there's a guy named Aaron Wren. I've had him on my own show before. He talks, or not so much anymore, but in the past, he's talked a lot about male-female dynamics and attractiveness and that sort of thing. And the fact of the matter is, with the advent of dating apps, men are put at a total disadvantage because, and this is where Myron is right, or at least he's circling the drain of what's right. And that is, the average woman is going to, number one, view herself as more attractive. Other women are going to view her, are going to tell her she's more attractive and tell her that she can get a more attractive man than maybe what she deserves, quote unquote, in terms of like, let's say she's a, whatever, however you want to rate people and all that stuff. I don't really get into that, obviously, but the fact is, this is a message to men then, and that's my primary audience is men. Make yourself as attractive as you can in every area. Go to the gym, work out. You don't have to be super jacked, but try to improve yourself physically, because whether you like it or not, women do look for physical form, and they want to see that your shoulders are wider than your waist, for example. That is something that women find attractive.
That's hilarious that you said that. I don't want to cut you off, but you know why that's funny is because Frank Sinatra is not that guy. But I went with my mom for her birthday just the other day to go see Guys and Dolls. And every suit he wears in that movie, his shoulders are like out to here.
Totally. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. He Nathan Detroit, right? We just watched
yes.
A few weeks back in my house. So as a single man, you really should aspire for success. You should aspire to be as godly as you possibly can, as physically fit as you possibly can, within reason. Don't make an idol out of it. As
Sure.
financially successful, you should try to be a likable person who commands respect and has gravitas. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are good things, and women really do find them attractive. You should also be sensitive. You should be, women have different categories that they look for. There's the mating, and then there's the dating. The dating is more about that initial flash, the things that catch her attention. But then the mating, that's the stuff that looks like you'll be a good long-term partner. And at the risk of rambling on anymore, as a single man, guys do need to be aware of these dynamics and not pretend like it's not godly to pursue these things or something like that. It can be very godly to steward yourself well, as long as you're doing it to the glory of Jesus Christ and with a view towards one day serving your wife. You're not doing it so you can become a player or become promiscuous or polygamous or something like that. You're doing it so you can be the best possible husband for your future wife. And then for us guys as husbands, we ought to try to be the best husbands we can. And then, play the card that God has dealt us, but try to play it as well as we can, I think.
100%. 100%. Let's jump to this next clip. We're finally going to hear from the pro-feminism side, and it's not so erudite. She's going to make an interesting point here in this clip. It's a bit of a longer clip, but she makes a good point at the end that I think is worth discussing. Let's have a look.
I think Myron agrees with that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is, average women don't want average men. They date up. And now with, the way we have society, hypergamy is not only reinforced, but it's encouraged. Women are told to not settle. They're told to get the best man that they can get. So a lot of girls think that they qualify for something a lot of times, which they actually don't. And sometimes I have to be the reality and let them know, like, look, you're average. You got to be, a little bit more realistic about where you stand.
This isn't really hypergamy,
average women don't want average men.
This isn't really hypergamy, though, right? Like, what are men typically selecting for in a relationship? Youthfulness, beauty, right? Some level of, like, making him feel good. What are women selecting for? Stability factors. And so in this way, women are dating the pool of men that give them the stability factors, because it usually takes men a couple of years to get education and a career and, like, something built underneath them. And men are selecting for the things that they want.
Well, it's not just stability anymore, is what I'm trying to say. It's not just stability. It's also, is the guy handsome? Is he tall? Is he charming? Is he charismatic? Like, since women make their own money, they're able to be a bit more selective because they don't just need the provisioning anymore. They want other things as well. Is he handsome? How does he look? Etc. So women do have a staked interest now in how a man looks and how he conveys himself as well, since they handle the provisioning part themselves. So it's made women more selective, but that's kind of come at their dismay because now it's harder to find that guy. There's the total package with everything.
Sure. The issue is that, like, the actual problem here is that we're leaving men behind. The issue isn't that we're, like, raising women up. It's
so a lot of interesting points brought up in that. First of all, the not so erudite made the point, or whether it was good or not, I don't think it was, that it takes men longer, and maybe this is true. But at least it didn't used to be in American society. It takes men longer to get an education and get under their feet now, aka to get their careers going. And then she said the real problem isn't that we're elevating women, it's that we're leaving men behind. And I think for a liberal woman to make that point is a little strange because it's liberal and progressive policies that are leaving the men behind, that are not just elevating women, but elevating women at the expense of men. It's not that, we're trying to make sure women have equal rights. We're trying to demonize men in every way possible and put women at the forefront. What do you guys think?
I think that the problem with education goes all the way back to elementary school. Public elementary schools are not designed to be boy-friendly environments. Sit behind a desk all day and listen to somebody talk. I mean, that's an absolute nightmare to a 9-year-old boy. I remember being in 3rd grade, just waiting for recess to start. And so that mentality follows you out all throughout school, up into high school, into college. And when Jeremiah, like you said, when you combine that with policies that disfavor men, you're going to feel like the system is stacked against you. So there does need to be a complete and total overhaul. I've got some ideas on how to do that, but I think that she makes a good point. I think that the system is leaving men behind. I think it's a rigged system in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't know if I hear a lot of me from both sides, to be honest, but I think a lot of it is reactionary. Well, if women are committing hypergamy and only marrying up, then I should just be a player for the first 10, 20 years of my life while these women are marrying up so that I can scoop up a 25-year-old when I'm 40. She can marry up to me, but I also have to be that guy when I get up there. I just think we have, back to what Joel said, a worldview issue of what is marriage? Is marriage just how do I level up in life and how do I have the happiest life possible? I think that's kind of where both sides are operating from.
If you noticed, exactly like you said. Yeah, all the stuff they were talking about. I didn't hear one spiritual thing in any of the qualifications that they listed. Not one.
Right. Which, hey, fair game coming from Myron's side, who is admittedly not religious or spiritual in any sense. But from the professing Christian, where is Christ at the foundation of your idea in which of the institute that he created?
That's exactly it, man. Marriage is created by God. God officiated the first marriage between Adam and Eve. You can read about it. Go back to Genesis. And Adam wakes up and sees Eve and says, this is my bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And God says the two will become one. The two will become one flesh. It's a ceremony. It's a marriage ceremony done before God. This is God's institution. And any approach that tries to get at marriage and male-female dynamics without recognizing that is ultimately going to fall flat. You can't get to the right destination if you don't even know where you're starting from or where you're supposed to be going.
For sure. And they don't even, like, there was a day in America where even if you weren't a Christian, you still respected Christian ethics, and marriage, the sanctity of marriage was still respected. And you kind of aimed for the same thing Christians were aiming for, even if that wasn't your worldview. And that's kind of flipped now, where the dominant view is the secular atheist view. And that's how you get everything that they were just talking about, just shooting and aiming for all the wrong things. And it's a bit ridiculous, but this next clip, gentlemen, this is going to get into some interesting discussion because we are going to jump to Tim Pool mentions a little something about voting, who should be doing it, and what the qualifications should be for it. Let's see what Tim has to say here.
Back to it, but and the question of feminism, the one thing that I really pisses me off, women won the right to vote without civic responsibility. And so
they shouldn't have the right to vote.
You can make the argument.
Repeal the 19th.
I think it's fine to say women should have the right to vote. However, we got to look at the context in the United States, and that's women do not have an obligation to die in war that men do, but women can vote overwhelmingly for Democrats promoting these wars, and then men are left on the hook for a war they tend not to vote for. That's fucked up.
So, sure. The issue
I'm glad we're on this topic. Repeal the 19th. I was going to say that earlier when she was yapping, but that's fine. Yeah, repeal the 19th.
I think only landowners should vote. Let's go back to pre-Civil War. Try to vote now, Myron.
So a bit of a joke there from Alex Stein, which was kind of funny because Myron would not have been allowed to vote pre-Civil War. But Tim Pool makes a really good point, right? Women can vote to send men off to war. And they, because the draft, obviously, right? We're not talking about volunteering for the military. We're talking about getting drafted. There's been plenty of drafts throughout American history, Civil War, Vietnam, World War II. And if you're going to vote for politicians who can send men off to war with you not having to go to war yourself, should you have the right to vote? The Bible doesn't really touch on this subject. So we kind of have to go with the role of, what the Bible says about civil government. What biblical wisdom can we kind of apply to this situation? I think we can apply some. And I think we also have to recognize that voting is not an unalienable right. It's not mentioned in the Bill of Rights, nor is it mentioned anywhere in the Bible as a God-given right. So there's no right to vote. It really is a privilege. I have my own thoughts. What do you guys think should be the parameters in which we should be voting in this country?
I want to know what Alexx thinks about this.
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but one thing that comes to mind is maybe we have some biblical qualifications, like those of an elder, right? Man of one wife, his kids, his family is in line. One thing is, like, if you're a single woman, especially on the war topic, yes, you're not going to be put out to war, but you also don't have a husband that's going to be put out to war. You don't have a son. If you don't have any kids, you don't have a son that's going to be put out to war. And also, if you're voting on things for the future of the country, if you don't have a family, where's your stake in the future of the country? You're just here for the next 60, 80 years, and then that's it. But my kids are going to have to live with the consequences of your decisions.
Yeah, man. So that is a good point. And I actually had a conversation with Elisa before we had, as I was talking with her earlier tonight before we got on here. And I said, what would you think about repealing the 19th Amendment and making it so that women couldn't vote? She said, I'd oppose that. And so we talked about, okay, why would that be? Because I will admit I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the best argument that I see on both sides. The best argument I see on the side of women being able to vote is that now she and I, because we're so aligned, she and I get 2 votes. And so I double my vote. Now, you might say, okay, but your vote is diluted by all the women who vote out there who oppose that. True, but in the current system we have, it is more beneficial for us both to have a vote to further what would be a godly outcome. As that's what we're pursuing anyway. We want to have a godly outcome. So I think that's the best. The fact that it's a force multiplier that we both vote, I think that's a good argument. On the other side, I think the best argument against it is what Tim Pool is mentioning, and that is that, look, if our homeland gets invaded, I'm going to fight. Elisa's not going to fight. And in a few years, our sons will have to fight. And my daughters won't, God willing. I mean, God willing, they would never get to that point. And so as a result of that, it's like this idea of 1 vote per household where the head of the household votes with his family's interests in mind. That to me does seem to be prudent. And I could probably make the case, and if you want to go there, we can, Jeremiah, that is the more biblical way of doing things.
Oh, is okay. Make that case. Make that case, because I will say that so I read this book, The Toxic War on Masculinity. I can't remember the name of the author, but in her research, she says that women didn't even care about the right to vote until we started removing all the other parameters around voting, to where just, minorities could vote. You didn't have to be a landowner anymore. And just all the restrictions on voting just went away, except for women. And that's when women started to care. But Joel, you said you could make that biblical case for the parameters of voting. Make that biblical case.
Okay, well, it starts in the Garden of Eden. Who sinned first in the Garden of Eden?
Eve.
Eve sinned first. Mankind was not plunged into sin when Eve sinned. Okay, mankind still kept its sinless status. How is that possible? I mean, half of humanity had fallen into sin. The Bible does not present Adam and Eve as one being inferior to the other.
Right.
So how is it possible, if they're both equal, how is it possible that Eve could sin and humanity was not plunged into death and trouble and sin and nature didn't fall and all that stuff? It's because Eve was not the representative. Adam was. Adam was the head. Adam represented his family. And that goes back, and look, this is before the old covenant was given. This is before the Abrahamic covenant was given. This is before the Noahic covenant was given. This is in creation. The man is the head and is the representative. So that's baked into creation. The husband represents his family. That also means that when Eve was being tempted and Adam stood there because he was there, if you go back and read Genesis 3, he was there. Adam should have taken that snake, whipped it around his head, and flung it off into the distance off a cliff.
Right.
That should have been the first death right there, is he should have killed that snake. And because he didn't, now Christ had to do that 4,000 years, 4,000 years later. Jesus Christ had to kill the serpent, and he did that by dying on the cross. But I do think that you can see this through line all throughout Scripture, that, who does God covenant with? When he covenants with mankind after the flood, it's with Noah. When he covenants with the progenitor of his chosen people, it's Abraham, not Sarah. When he covenants with the royal bloodline that the Messiah is going to come from, it's David. It's not Micah or one of David's other wives. It's always with the man, because the man represents the family. The man represents the people. So I do think that, biblically speaking, and that doesn't leave women behind. It doesn't make women inferior at all. If anything, it gives women a privileged status, because they're not putting their neck on the line, they're not bearing the responsibility. The buck doesn't stop with her. It stops with him.
Right.
Yep.
If we're making biblical cases for voting, what happened in biblical times when men didn't agree? Did they take a vote? Or they usually either went to war or drew lots.
That's right.
They trusted God so much that they would actually draw lots over trusting the group's decision, right? So I'm not even entirely sure voting is the right way. Even when God set up Israel, Israel was supposed to have one king, and that was God. And the most qualified men were supposed to be the leaders. And I think that we need to get back to some form of that.
Well, and that's what you see in the New Testament, because we do want to be basing, I know I'm appealing to the Old Testament here, but we do want to make sure that what we're saying is in line with the New Covenant and the New Testament. But Alexx, what you just said about, the most qualified men leading, that's church eldership right there. And that wasn't that what you said earlier? Like, the requirements for church eldership are they're lofty, but they're really something that we should all be aspiring towards.
Right.
So there are biblical qualifications. So I could say there's a parallel between New Testament church eldership and, in the Old Testament, Moses picking the men who were going to be the judges and the arbiters of Old Covenant Israel, so that he didn't have to make all the decisions himself. I do think that you see, qualified men representing their families, representing their people.
All great points. All great points. We're going to jump ahead. Alex Stein here asks a question.
Great name.
Great. How many X's does he have?
Yeah, he's not as cool.
He's only got one. He's a single X.
Yeah. If he was really cool, he'd have 47 X's in his name, like you.
Well, there's only one triple X. There's only one triple X.
That's right.
And then Myron goes off on a tirade, and then we get a definition of feminism, and we'll see if we agree with this definition.
People that Myron blames his problems on it's not women.
Well, I want to let Myron respond, but I guess I want to pose this question. What is the bigger threat, feminism or misogyny? What's worse for society?
So when I say feminism, I feel like things like I have the right to vote, I have a job, I'm a participating member of society, which is different than hating men. So it kind of depends how you
do you hate women, Myron? I'm not, just more curious.
Sometimes. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. Look, the reality is that when it comes to feminism, etc., women are stupid. Let's be honest about this. And the reason why, right, it's not just, and she said it herself, misogyny isn't something new. She's right. In ancient China, to the Middle East, to Eastern Europe, everybody knew that women are so we need to make them second-class citizens. So that's why they don't have the right to vote and do a lot of stuff. And then now
what an eloquent argument. I never could have come up with something that intelligent
like
as a
right now.
stupid
Holy
woman.
crap.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. First of all, okay, so what is the bigger problem, misogyny or feminism? I would argue both. But then she gives a definition of feminism that is no longer used. Like maybe, like Joel, you talked earlier, first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave. Who by the time we're dead, it'll be ninth wave, freaking final form, Frieza, Dragon Ball Z feminism. But like I want equal rights and like that's not feminism anymore. I'm going to give you my definition of feminism. I did a little research. I kind of mashed some things together here. Tell me what you guys think, or maybe if you have a different definition of feminism. But I have feminism defined as a contemporary ideology often emphasizing individual autonomy, gender neutrality, and rejection of traditional and biblical gender roles, biblical marriage, and biblical family structures. What do you guys think of that definition?
Well, that's not how they would define it.
Your definition was pretty apathetic, meaning like you drew out the negatives of what it doesn't want, right? It's a rejection of the patriarchy, a rejection of traditional roles. And to be honest, she didn't give a definition. She just gave examples. And it shows that
true.
If you're going to have serious conversations on podcasts where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to listen to you, maybe take the time to memorize or write down. Even So Erudite wrote down her definition of feminism.
Yeah.
It's kind of important.
Very important. And so I actually took some time. I looked up some definitions, and I found one coming from the Oxford Dictionary. And look, we want to steel man our opponents, right?
Sure.
So the Oxford Dictionary defines feminism as advocacy of equality of the sexes and the establishment of the political, social, and economic rights of the female sex, the movement associated with this. All right. And then there's a historical element to this. At its most benign, feminism is the movement that says men and women ought to be viewed equally under the law and by society. At its most benign. Sure. Is that actually how it plays out? And is that a worthy goal? I think that we could debate both of those points. I think that the way that it plays out turns out to be very different, where it ends up promoting women over against men, where men become seen as the inferior sex, or at least that's the goal. I don't think a society can ever actually get there, because I think men are going to rule. I think patriarchy is actually inevitable. It's just a question of which men. And, but yeah, I can elaborate on that, but go on.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I would say that that's actually a fantastic definition, because what the leftists can then do is do all these terrible things and be like, well, that's not what we're doing. Look, this is the definition. This is what I'm doing. Pay no attention. All this stuff that you say is bad. No, what I'm doing is this. So I can take the definition and excuse terrible behavior, because I'm just trying to equal rights under the law. That's what it says. That's what I want.
Well, and part of the big problem with feminism is, again, it's a worldview issue. It starts with the idea that the fundamental unit of society is not the household, it's the individual. So we have to take a man and a woman, and we have to say, these are two pegs, like at the Cracker Barrel peg game. They're interchangeable. You could put them wherever. Doug Wilson talks about this. It's the idea that human beings are BBs in a drawer, where you open up the drawer and they just kind of bounce around all over each other. And that's not what human beings are. The fundamental unit of society is not the individual, it's the household. And feminism does not start from that point. And that's why they're obsessed with equality, egalitarianism. That's not the proper starting point. We're not primarily individuals at the expense of our collective family relationships.
Yeah, to them, a household is one adult woman, or maybe 3 adult men and 2 adult women.
Right.
Or...
right. That's right. Well, who's to say?
Yeah.
Who's to say?
That's yeah. Who's to say, right? Who by what standard?
That's exactly right. And the question was raised, Jeremiah, you asked, which is the bigger issue?
Yes, misogyny or feminism?
Without a doubt, it's feminism right now. they're both sinful. They're both sinful.
Right.
And in the past, perhaps misogyny has been, but misogyny is also put up as this boogeyman that we have to fight against. And it's just this classic ploy that the enemy, and I mean the enemy of our souls, the devil, will use, where when he's attacking you over here at your left flank, he'll tell you, watch out for the right flank, watch out for the right flank. So misogyny becomes this boogeyman where, yeah, are there misogynists in our society? 100%. Are we an overall misogynistic society? Absolutely not. We're a feminist society. That's why we view misogyny as such a big problem, because that's the boogeyman that's set up in order to advance feminism. And it's feminism that has pushed the disintegration of the family, the so-called trans rights movements, all that stuff. That's come out of feminism. So feminism, if you ask me, is the bigger threat currently in our society today, even though they're both sinful.
Such a good point. A lot of what they say is misogyny is just non-feminism.
Exactly. That's right.
It's like, so that's dang near anything then. You can just
Yeah.
Oh, you like to do yard work, you misogynist. What?
Right.
Let's jump to our next clip here, guys. We are going to Myron again making just terrible points. But it's going to bring up a good question. Who brings more value to society? Is there an answer to that question, or is it equal? Let's see what Myron has to say.
Try to say Wi-Fi was made by women. No, it wasn't. It was made by men as well. Women don't invent anything. They don't contribute to anything besides, like, to be honest, the only real value women have is reproductive
I contribute more to the economy than you do, Myron, just objectively.
Wait, I want to say I'm on Kat and not So Erudite's side, though, that don't you think women are equally valuable to society, though? You don't think so?
Dude, if you remove sex and reproduction, they provide almost nothing.
Yeah, but those are we wouldn't have life without those things.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So don't
sure. But I want to be clear about this.
Field?
We don't need them. Like, here's the thing. Women need us. We don't need them. We need them to propagate
They have
society
our
for the
babies,
next
dude.
generation. That's what my point. I said outside of reproduction. So, like, if we want to have kids, yes, we need them, but they need us for everything. So the reality is men bring far more value to society than women do. The only real value they provide is reproductive value. Because let's be honest here, you guys don't give a fuck about what they got to say. You guys are here for us. Nobody cares about what women got to say. They're the suckiest podcasters, female YouTubers.
Boy. Contribute nothing to society, only good for reproduction. See, to me, the problem with having Myron on this show is he's almost making a case for feminism.
Right.
When he acts this way.
That's right. That's right. It's hard to know what the heck he's about here. Is he just trying to further his own brand, or is he really trying to put forward some kind of thoughtful argument? Like, because this is not the way to do it. Alex, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. You look like you were going to say something.
No, not at all. I mean, I was just going to say feminism, exactly what you said, where he makes arguments against feminism saying, you're the reason why we're not having babies. But then he says, oh, your only value is making babies. Which one is it?
Right. Well, and look, even if he was right, which he's not, but even if he was right, procreation, what do you call it? Reproduction, which I don't like that term reproduction. That's what a machine does.
Right.
Okay. It's procreation. We're procreating. God is the ultimate creator. We are subcreating. We're procreating. But even if that was all that women did, that's pretty freaking important. We wouldn't exist if, and the Apostle Paul talks about this, how every man comes from a woman, and every woman had her origin in the first man. Men and women need each other. But dude, I'm thinking about my own wife here. I'm thinking about Elisa. Is she, did she procreate 4 children? Yeah, together we procreated 4 children. Incredibly valuable. I love my kids, but man, when I'm feeling down and I'm just feeling like bedraggled and pushed down by the world, who am I going to? I go to her. And not to say that I cast my burdens on Christ, okay? And I've learned not to make her my dumping ground for all of my troubles in life. Far from it. I need to be leading her, not the other way around. But man, she's so encouraging to me and so helpful and supportive. It's infuriating to me to think that somebody would say that. I mean, maybe he just never met a good woman. And obviously some women are very bad women, but like, man, my wife is amazing at all this stuff. It creates a lot of value in my life. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, it's wild to hear that, because even if you're not going the biblical route, I mean, the research and the science has also proved what God has already spoke in His Word, and that is, like you said, like the household is the cornerstone, besides Jesus, of course, but and a household consists of the kids, the mom, and the dad. And when one of those is missing, whether it's the dad or the mom, that is a detriment to the children. You have to have both, and there's a reason that you have to have both, because God designed families to be that way. So to say that your wife is only good for reproduction, or a woman is only good for birthing babies, it's like completely dismissing. If you were to raise your kids as a single father, those kids are going to be raised at a disadvantage by not having a mother, and vice versa. And that's just because when you go against God's design, that's exactly what happens.
My children would hate me if it was just me, because a lot of times I'm just way too hard on them because I want them to be good men.
Yes.
And my wife always reminds me and is always there to coddle them sometimes after the harsh discipline. Sometimes it's too harsh.
You need both, man.
Yeah. And the logic of his argument is just bad. If you take away the thing that makes women valuable, then they have no value. Okay, you could say the same thing about men. List the valuable things that men provide. All right, now take them away. Are men valuable? No. Oh, good job. Good argument.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Right. He's identifying the most important thing to civilization, which is procreation. He's not even getting all the value that women have, but he's identifying the one thing, that the sine qua non of civilization. You must have procreation. What's everybody up in arms about right now? The falling birth rate. Because we understand civilization is going to fail unless we have more babies. And then he's saying, other than that one vital function, they have no value. Well, okay, so the one thing that our entire society is up in arms about, not just in America, but in China, Japan, Korea, Europe, everywhere, nobody's got a replacement rate that I'm aware of. Maybe I guess some countries probably do, but so you take away that one function that only they can play, and then they have no value. So you're exactly right. The logic of it is just is very childish. That's why I say, is he trying to actually forward good arguments here, or is he just trying to become more bombastic and build his own brand?
Right? Does he actually believe what's coming out of his mouth? I don't know. You know more about him than I do, Alexx. What do you think he believes what he says?
I think so, and I think even when you play a character, if he's playing a character, he plays it 24/7. And if you play a character 24/7, you will become that character. He has admitted multiple times that he just works. And it is something you can admire about a man when he has a good work ethic, obviously. And especially, hey, look, if you're a single guy, there's not much wrong with working 18 hours a day. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? But I think that he just needs to work on his logic. And it's interesting to me because I know some of the guys who are close to him and in his life who definitely push him on his logic. And I wonder what's keeping him from changing.
Well, if he's a closet Islamist like he's been accused of, that could be. It could be that. It could be that. We're going to jump to 24 minutes in here. The liberal, not so erudite, is going to list off some things that she says matters to the American project. Let's see if she nailed it or if she's way off the mark here.
The things that you tend to value are the things that he's inferior. The issue is, hold on, just so it's clear.
Can you open
I don't think that fresh is inferior, because I don't think that only these things matter to the value of a person. When we talk about things like the Western civilization tradition, if you guys actually care about the American project and what this means, we have to get real about the things that are the precepts of what we believe in. This is things like Christian theology and Aristotelian thinking. And in these precepts, everyone assumes that there is going to be a variety of ways in which people are beneficial, but we don't typically give inferior or superior because we recognize, for example, that while Fresh is not as strong as a debater as you, he's so...
So is that the only two things that matter to the American project, Christian theology and Aristotelian thinking. I had to look that one up, which is now here's where you guys come in, because you're the debaters here, and you've probably incorporated this in some way in your debates. But the Aristotelian thinking is a philosophical approach derived from the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, emphasizing logic, observation, and systematic reasoning to understand the world. It involves empiricism and observation, logic and syllogism, causality, virtue and ethics, teleology, the belief that natural processes and titles have inherent purpose and goals. I, of course, know from watching you guys that you can't have any of those things without God in the first place, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Triple X, what do you think about that?
I think she's putting forth some version of Christian rationalism, which is Christian in name only. It's basically God. It's like a deist argument almost, where God is the foundation of everything, but we come to all of our conclusions based purely on rationalism, right? We just use our thinking, our human autonomy to come to our conclusions. I don't take any Christian advice from the disheveled Brestany. I don't. She has no business teaching or providing Christian thought on these topics. I have absolutely no time to hear her shaking as she's telling us these things. I don't know. That's where
you're calling her that because she's the female Destiny, right? Destiny, the left wing commentator or whatever. Yeah, the Aristotelian thinking that threw me for a loop a little bit. Aristotelianism, I mean, you could go multiple ways with that, but like Aristotle is credited with coming up or identifying the classical laws of logic. They say that Aristotelian thinking is what led to the scientific revolution. It's actually not at all. As a matter of fact, although Aristotle was unlike Plato, Plato said that real reality was in the world of forms, which is an inaccessible world. We only access it by memory, and that's the real world of reality. Aristotle said that this world was real. The things that we can see and touch, the form is encompassed, is contained within the substance. So like, without getting too philosophical, he did value the natural world. And so some people say, because he valued observation in the natural world, that's what led to science. It's actually not. It did influence Thomas Aquinas 1200, 1700 years after Aristotle. And Aquinas was very influential to Roman Catholicism, and scientific revolution kind of came out of that late medieval world. I would say it's more of a product of the Reformation myself. But all this to say, she needs to go further with Christian theology. That is the real foundation. It's the Christian worldview. Again, this is a worldview issue. And just historically speaking, there is a reason why the ancient Greeks did not come up with a scientific revolution, even with Aristotle, because some people have said there should have been a scientific revolution in ancient Greece after Aristotle. The foundation of it maybe should have been there, but it didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen is because ancient Greece did not have the worldview where God is sovereign and God keeps nature uniform. And Aristotle, it's like, who the heck is Aristotle? We're not going to listen to him. What's the worldview? What's the metaphysics, the metaphysical foundation? What's the epistemology? Rationalism is totally man-centered. So because they didn't have a biblical concept of God, what they did was they actually fell back into this polytheistic irrationalism. It's a whole lot easier to be lazy and to attribute everything to the fates and everything to the gods and everything to, and then let's all go worship Dionysus, the god of wine, and let's get drunk and have an orgy. And so in ancient Greece, they didn't have a scientific revolution. So what she needs to do is she needs to stop trying to equate rationalism of Aristotle with Christian theology, and maybe she'd put Enlightenment rationalism in there as well. No, the foundation for a solid society is biblical Christianity. That is the true foundation. Forget about Aristotle. Bring him in as needed, but the foundation is Christianity.
For sure. And which was the foundation of America. Now, yes, the founding fathers did look at other I don't want to say necessarily philosophers because they weren't really political philosophers. They looked at other things, but the majority, the University of Houston put together a compilation of quotes from the founding fathers to find out, hey, what were these guys talking about? And when they were discussing government, the number one quoted source was the Bible. That is an objective fact. When the founding fathers were talking about government, the number one source that they went to for that information was the Bible. So yes, Christian theology is that solid foundation. And we see that, we bore such, there was some bad, but overall, we changed world history using Christianity as the foundation of our country. And it wasn't Aristotelian thinking, like you said, and you can't, there is no logic without God anyway. There's no causality without God anyway. So all of it, without Christianity, you don't even have Aristotelian thinking or anything that is involved with it in the first place, right?
Yeah, 100%.
She did say one good thing. If you're not as good of a debater as me, you are completely inferior to me. I disagree with her.
Wait. Say that again.
She said that Myron's partner, Fresh, is not a good of debater as him, but that doesn't mean that he's inferior to him. I disagree. If you're not as good of a debater as me, you're just completely inferior to me in all possible ways. So.
Okay.
Just kidding.
All right.
Just kidding.
Fair enough.
As a fellow debater, I'll endorse that. Yeah, that's good. That's the standard now.
That's it. That's the standard.
Hey, debate's on the rise, man. Get it in while you can get it, right?
Yeah.
All right, fellas, for the sake of time, we're going to jump ahead. So they go back and forth, right? And eventually, towards the end of the show, they invite audience members to come up and ask the debaters questions. So we're going to jump to the first questions that was asked. This girl, Eva, is going to ask Myron a question that I think is it was actually from, when you consider audience members coming up and most of the time they're drunken fools. And I don't know if you've seen the show before, but they very rarely contribute much good. But this lady asked a really good question, which I think is going to spark some good.
Nice to see you guys. My first thing I would like to say is the man on the far left over here, what was your name again?
Myron.
Myron, yeah. I would just like to say that your rhetoric sounds exactly like third wave radical feminism, but for a man. And I was just wondering how you expect to solve a problem by doing the exact same thing that you think is the problem.
Well, because when men have monopoly of power, good things happen. When women have it, society crumbles.
Come on up, Ava. That's good. She's smart. No, the other way. Just come this way. No, this way. Come on down.
I like it when
this is spicy. Yeah,
making fun of Myron.
Ooh,
Eva,
Myron.
give it up, Eva.
All right. Eva or Ava.
Like from Wall.
Hello.
How are you?
Is it
It's Eva, I fucked
Eva
that
or
up.
Igua?
Eva.
Eva, okay.
So explain why Myron was wrong again.
She said I'm radical, basically.
Well, I just think that your rhetoric is exactly the same thing that you hate.
Okay.
And I was wondering how you think that's going to solve the problem. If women hating men is what has caused this problem in the first place, how is men hating women going to fix it?
Yeah, so it's not us hating you guys. It's just us realizing that you guys are not equal to us, and we have to be the custodians of women. We have to protect and provide for you guys. I'm actually very big into a traditional relationship where the man is the leader and protects and provides for his woman, and all she has to worry about is making sandwiches and taking care of the kids. And I think that's how society's thrived for a long time. So it's actually the contrary. I think men need to protect women from themselves a lot of the times, because I don't think women in positions of power leads to a great society.
So one other thing that you said earlier was that men being in power has led to a great history.
Yes.
Do you think that the history of men being in power is flawless?
No, there's always going to be flaws with human error in general.
So human error in general, that includes men and women. And why would women have more error than men?
Well, here's the thing. We don't have any matriarchies that have stood the test of time, really. Everything that's been successful has been a patriarchy. So, there's a bunch of beehives. Fantastic.
We're not bees, we're not
Of
bees.
course.
I hate stuff like that.
Except for bees.
Yeah, we're not bees.
wait.
Sorry, Ava, we're not bees.
My problem with this is if Myron would just just submit to Christ, I think he would make much better arguments, because he like you said, Joel, like he swirls around the toilet bowl. He's getting there, but never
I didn't
quite
say toilet bowl. I didn't say toilet bowl, but I said drain, so that's fair.
drain toilet. Well, the toilet bowl is he's swirling around the drain, but never can quite make it into the drain with his points. yes, the job of men is to protect and provide for women, but not because we're not protecting them from themselves because they're stupid or some of that other stuff that he was saying. Like he's like right there, which is why one of us, a good Christian biblical man, should have been the one there to kind of set the record straight, because he takes something good and runs with it in the complete wrong direction, and he did it again here. Now maybe patriarchy, like you said, Joel, patriarchy is inevitable. So most of the successful civilizations in the world, patriarchies, right? However, when we look to the Bible, and correct me on this, we see Deborah, right? There are instances of women taking the lead in certain situations to get things done. So what's the is it never women should never have that leadership role? We should never put women in positions of leadership? Or are there situations where it is biblical to put women in a leadership role?
I want to pass it to Joel, but I just want to say beforehand, just because a woman is in charge doesn't mean that men aren't doing her bidding, and it's still not a patriarchy.
Go on. No. Expand on that.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, how does a woman get things done? If Joel could tell us more of the story of Deborah, he's more familiar with that than I am. But if a woman is in a leadership role, how is she getting things done? Who is she using to get those things done? Especially in a political sense, right? The enforcement arm is always going to be men. It's always going to be patriarchal, whether or not a queen is at the top or a woman.
So I've got the story of Deborah pulled up. This is coming from Judges chapter 4. This whole story is phenomenal. And I know I have a tendency to get a little long-winded when I'm talking about scripture and history. So cut me off if you need to, but we need to unpack this story. We need to really unroll this, because it is so often used by egalitarians, feminists, and it should never be used by any egalitarian or any feminist ever again, because it does not support their view in the slightest. Deborah is not a pastor. She's not a queen. She's not a ruler. She is a judge. Judges were raised up by God for a particular purpose. And the way that Deborah rules, so judges were liberators of their people, and there was a rulership aspect to it. Okay. But the way that she judges, I said the word rule a second ago, the way that she discharges her office is so feminine. It's so feminine. First of all, people are coming to her under the tree where she sits, and they're bringing their disputes, and she's giving them wisdom. She's like a mother in Israel. There's nothing wrong with this. This is good. This is fine. She's advising. This is very good. She's giving them wisdom. So right away, Myron's point about women only be good for procreation, totally shot out of the water here. Okay, so she's giving advice. She's adjudicating. But then there's Sisera, who is oppressing the people of Israel, and Sisera is this evil general, and Sisera is oppressing Israel. So what does Deborah do? Well, we all know she's the judge. The judge is the one who liberates the people, right? So of course Deborah straps her sword on her hip and mounts onto her stallion and gets her shield, puts on her helmet, and Deborah leads the army into victory, and like Eowyn in Lord of the Rings, and she just destroys Sisera. Is that what happens? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What does Deborah do? Deborah goes to Barak. Who is Barak? Barak is God's chosen man who's actually supposed to be leading the armies of Israel against Sisera, against the evil oppressors. Deborah goes to Barak. She comes off she's one hair's breadth away from being a nagging wife. That's the role she's playing. Now, she's not nagging, she's not his wife, but she's exhorting him. And she as a woman is helping Barak to play his manly role. And she says, has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you, go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun. And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops. And I will give him into your hand. And it's a question. Why is it a question? Because God has already commanded Barak to do this. Deborah is not originating the command. She's not, she did not receive a revelation from God that he didn't receive. He was already told by God to do this. She's exhorting him to do this. And it's Barak's responsibility to lead into battle. So Deborah is very feminine here. She's doing what any good woman would do for a man who's being too passive. And she's exhorting him. She's not taking the reins. She's not saying, since there's not a good man to do this, I'm going to take the reins myself and I'm going to do it myself. No, she's not doing that at all. All right. Then later in the story, this is not always mentioned. Later in the story, there is, if you find out how is Sisera actually defeated, it is actually not by Barak, although he does play a vital role, but because Barak was too afraid to go out into battle, God does deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. And people sometimes point to this and they go, see a woman fighting. Jael, she was a warrior. She was a war fighter. No. Jael is in her tent. She's keeping home. She's keeping the house. And Sisera comes into Jael's tent while she's in there, doing domestic things. And Sisera is tired. So what does she do? She exercises hospitality. A very, very, now men should be hospitable as well, but she's welcoming him into her domestic sphere. She offers him some milk. He lays down because the milk makes him very drowsy. He lays down. And then this is where people say this, she's being masculine. Not at all. She takes a tent peg and a hammer. And you go, man, a spike and a hammer. That's manly. What's she about to do? Are you kidding me? Jael is a homemaker. She knows how to fix the tent peg when it comes uprooted. She knows how to make the house. There's nothing masculine about knowing how to hammer in a tent peg. She's literally a homemaker. So she does the thing that she's been doing as a good wife for however many years or decades, and she takes the tent peg and drives it into Sisera's temple while he's sleeping. And she just keeps hammering it. He probably actually, if you read later on, he probably tried to stand up again, and she didn't even drive it through the whole way the first time. Okay, but then she just keeps hammering it, probably terrified at this point that he's going to get up, and she just boom, 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 and Sisera goes down. Both Deborah and Jael exercise their God-given femininity and help to liberate God's people. But Barak is the man. Barak is leading the army. Barak wins the actual military victory, and God's order is restored. So this is not a story about how when men don't step up, women need to take the reins and do the job of man. A woman cannot do the job of a man. That's why God gave both. But a woman can help a man do the job that he was supposed to do.
That was a huge nail in the coffin of anybody trying to use Deborah to promote feminism. That was great.
That was great. No, yeah, that was a fantastic breakdown, and that so Myron did make a genuinely decent point there, in his statements. And then Joel or Alexx, correct me if I'm wrong here. Am I taking this verse out of context to where it says in the Bible, and I looked this up, that if women are ruling over you, it is actually a curse if children and women rule over you. Isaiah 3:12. My people, infants are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, your guides misled you, and they have swallowed up the course of your paths. Am I taking that out of context, or is that describing, hey, if children and women are ruling over you, that's not a good thing?
What's wrong with infants oppressing you?
Okay, flesh that out, though. Why do you say that? Because this is a good reductio.
Yeah, with the woman, right, you can try to make all these different arguments, but the absurd picture of an infant controlling you and ruling over you and oppressing you is just, right. You don't even have to explain it. You can just picture it in your mind. That's ridiculous.
That's right.
Well, think about this. King Tut, there were kings who came to power at like 8 years old in ancient civilizations. So as ridiculous as it is, it did happen on occasion.
Yes. And how absurd is that an 8-year-old would be in command of a nation? I mean, yeah, historically, and Israel had child kings as well. But they were typically, the pattern is that they'd be kept under like a kind of a stewardship or a guardianship until they reached majority, until they were no longer minors, and then they could rule. And that's not necessarily an ideal situation. Okay. And God could bless an 8-year-old with wisdom, sure. But Alexx is exactly right. It's an absurd picture for a reason. It's absurd. And actually, if you look at the commentaries on this verse, this is Isaiah 3:12, where it talks about how women will be your oppressors, children will be your oppressors. It's so absurd. It would have been so fantastical to the ancient Israelite mind that this is not a literal statement. It's not literally children will rule over you women. That's not even possible. The idea is, well, one, it's supposed to tell you that that you're going to be in an absurdly oppressive situation, and you're going to be so weak and powerless because you didn't follow the Lord. You're not even going to be able to resist the people you should obviously be able to resist. Like you should be able to win an arm wrestling match against a kid. You know, you should be able to bench press more than your wife. You know, I'm again, some husbands are maybe can't. Okay, but as a general
the mayor
rule,
of New York?
the wannabe mayor. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Couldn't even get 135 up without a spotter. But like
Two spotters.
This is, oh my, yeah, that's right. And he was like lifting it for him. But the idea is, we're not just talking about one woman who's stronger than one man. This is like a whole class of women. This is one commentator. This is Barnes. If you look at Barnes' notes on the Bible on this passage, it's probably talking about like the harem, the kept women of the king were exerting influence. In other words, the king himself was this mamby-pamby, effeminate goon who was sort of being ruled by the women in his life, and they're the ones really pulling the shots, calling the shots. It's kind of like Hillary and Bill, that kind of situation. Like we all know who wears the pants in that relationship. Hypothetically speaking, I've got no information about Hillary Clinton in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and I am very much happy with my life, but would never harm myself. But you see, it's an absurd situation, and Alexx is exactly right. If it's absurd that a child would rule over the men in the nation, then it's also similarly absurd that women would. Not because they're inferior. They're not ontologically inferior. It's just not what they're for. You're not supposed to be ruled by the women in your life.
That's a great point with you said ontologically inferior. It seems like in these conversations, these category errors are happening that's causing them to talk past each other. Unless Myron actually believes women are ontologically inferior, then obviously that's just
a real
might. Problem. Yeah.
I think he might.
I think like you said, Alexx, I think he has become his character. Well, I really do. Yeah. He's the method actor that can't snap out of it. But all right, gentlemen, I got 3 more clips for us. This next one is important. I wanted to get to it because this is a discussion on fathers and what role they should play in a woman's when she's being courted. And it gets. I'm going to forewarn everybody here. Now, this was recorded, so I'm going to try and edit this as best I can. But this is a very crude conversation. This is probably one of the crudest parts of the conversation. So earmuffs if you got the kids around, and just forewarning everybody right now that this is a very crude part of the conversation. But I think this topic is very important.
Making crass jokes, so I'm jumping in with you. So the point is that I think the father should actually be involved. I think the father should be involved actually in the mating process with a woman. I think the dad should actually be intimately involved with picking the guy, because when women are left to their own devices,
can I?
That is kind of weird. All right, guys,
should he pull out?
Does he like hold your hand while you do it?
That's the future you want.
Is he pushing his asses a little bit more to help?
Here we go. She's not even going to let me speak. It's very simple. So I actually think that fathers should be involved in their daughters' mating decisions, because here's the thing with women. You guys tend to pick the bad boy or the guy that might not necessarily be the best long-term suitor when you're at your highest value. So when the father comes in, he's able to assess this guy, be like, no, this guy doesn't really want you for you. He just wants to use you for sex. I don't want this guy. I'm going to go find you another guy that's going to actually, love you and be with you long-term and provision. This is why arranged marriages work for so long. When women are able to make their own decisions, they do dumb. So it is what it is.
It's like when the farmer dad chases the guy out of the house.
So as crass and cruel or disgusting as that conversation was, and it was the women who made that conversation disgusting. Myron again did make a good point. He does have some good ones there. I guess we can admit that, just not the best. But I digress. His point was fathers, women, especially young women. I don't think this applies to all women when, left to their own devices, all make terrible decisions, but young women can make terrible decisions. And I think the father should be involved in who that woman dates, who is allowed to court that woman. And then, of course, the feminist was like, hey, Dad, am I allowed to beep? And it's like, well, that's not what we're talking about here. You took something noble and made it gross, which is what feminism does. It makes almost everything it touches just gross and disgusting.
Yeah, and
so
the answer to that
like
question
Myron
is no.
or agree with much of any of his points here. I think that point is something that is biblical and should be practiced more often, because I think families, it would be a really heavy contributing factor in families staying together if fathers had more input in who their daughters date.
Well, can you imagine if more young women really did call their dads and ask that question? What's the answer going to be? I mean, the reason why that's such a crazy question is because I would never ask my dad that question. Why not? Don't you think your dad loves you? Don't you think your dad knows what's best for you? Don't you think that's a pretty silly and stupid thing to ask your dad? Yeah, I think it is, because you already know the answer. So then go with what you know that your dad, who's older and wiser than you and who raised you, you know what he's going to say. He cares more about your purity and your value as a person than you do right now. So why don't you go with what your dad says?
Yeah, that's devastating. That was great. And any chance to rag on Not So Smart here, I'll take. When you like when someone else makes a joke, right? We do it all the time. We'll add on to the joke with another thing that's funny. Mm-hmm. But when it's a crude joke, she didn't even make the joke funnier. She just made it more crude. And like, I don't even think the other woman laughed at all. Like she was probably like, what the heck is this chick talking about? But it shows her agreeing with this feminist shows that she doesn't care about Christian ideology. She doesn't care about what God has to say about these matters, because if she did, she would see the theme in the Old and New Testament of fathers being heavily involved in the decisions of their daughters. Like, who your daughter marries reflects your upbringing of her, and you're supposed to protect her. You are literally her protector, not until she turns 18, but until she is with another man, and then it's his job. It also reflects on the man you are if you have the approval of their father, right? Like, that's something that should be valued by you is, does her father think that I'm a good enough man for her? And if not, maybe I'm not a good enough man for this woman. And maybe it would be a disservice to her for me to marry her. And nobody wants to say that. Nobody wants to face that music, but I think that's the manly thing to do.
So I think the crux of the issue here is that fathers, yes, should be heavily involved. I don't think it's weird. I think they made it weird, and I'm not sure why it was so like Myron being the vulgar one. Almost that entire debate, them to just take that in that direction was just bizarre and icky. Couple more clips here for you guys. I got this one. It was a good mic drop moment in this debate. It was probably my favorite moment in the entire debate.
$3.7 billion in revenue.
All right, what do you got for us, Adam?
Okay, so
$0.
they're in a deficit.
I just want to say that Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Boom. Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That's really what should have been said way at the beginning of this debate to start off the debate. Christ is King. And then he goes on, he does go on to say that kind of what we had been talking about, how like your worldview, your presuppositions influences everything that you do. And I'm actually shocked that was the first and only Christian besides Not So Erudite, who claims to be a Christian, to get a voice in here in this debate. But that was a beautiful moment, I thought.
And we didn't hear it in the clip just now, but like you said, he goes on to start talking about presuppositions and worldviews and systematic thinking. And I love hearing that because both me and Joel and yourself, we talk about these things, and we really people don't like to think in those terms, but I love seeing it because it means that people are watching content like ours and really starting to understand that this is the way we need to think.
Why don't you think people think that way?
I'm not sure why, but I mean, I had a conversation today with a guy I met playing video games on the internet, and I've known him for a while. He just invited me to his wedding. He's getting married. He doesn't live too far from me.
Wow.
And we built this relationship, but he's not like an anti-theist online hating Christianity and stuff, but he is a self-professed atheist. And we're talking about morality, and he's just not getting the meta-ethic level. Like, he's talking about, he's a neuroscientist, and he's talking about cognitive science and how all these studies prove that humans at young ages have this innate morality. And I'm like, yes, great. You're talking about descriptions, and you're talking about what is, and I'm talking about what ought. And to me, these things are very basic, right? You guys just automatically, yeah, okay, there's all gap, all this stuff. But to him, he just can't get. And then finally, once we unravel what we're talking about, he's like, oh, well, I don't care about that stuff. Because it's when you're not on the winning side of that argument, it's easy not to care about it.
Sure.
Gotcha.
How cool is it that science confirms Romans 2? Everybody has a conscience. How about that?
How about that? How about that? Final question here, guys, that's asked at the end of this debate, which I think is how we need to put the bow on this. The final question that was asked, let's take a look at what it was and see if we can give a better answer than what was given.
Timpf, not so erudite, what do you got for us?
Okay, so if we as a society want to get back to traditional values and a strong nuclear family, how are we supposed to do that when we lack strong male role models in the public eye, especially when we've got public figures with strong influence amongst young men and boys who are constantly like criticizing 304s, but like bragging about.
What do you mean? You got Andrew Tate.
Yeah. No, but we've also got Myron Gaines.
Let's see what Myron has to say. What do you got, Myron?
Well, I think what we tell guys, if you watch the content, we talk a lot about self-improvement, going in the gym, understanding that, you got to be the best version of yourself, and then, obviously pursue the women after you become that complete package, because nowadays with the way hypergamy is, women don't want average men anymore. So we're very vocal about that. I think people only look at the content of me debating, women or whatever, but they don't look at all the self-improvement content I put out on, improving your credit, real estate investing, getting in the gym and training.
No, I've seen a lot of that. And I agree with you on a lot of things. But,
yes, and how Jews control everything.
I don't agree with you.
So, of course, he goes on and says pretty much nothing. But again, we notice most of the things he listed off, get money, physical appearance, go to the gym, good and fine things. But that's not how we get back to traditional values. And that's despite what you say, the lack of good role models for men in the public eye, because I think there's good role models out there. They're just not in the public eye. So how do we solve that problem then, gentlemen? I have some thoughts, but what do you think?
Myron's prescriptions for men is a reaction to hypergamy. That's all it is. He just wants you to get better so that you're not the loser in the situation. He doesn't really care about hypergamy changing. He just wants to teach men how to be the guy on top in the hypergamy culture. But this is the devastating blow to Myron of he doesn't have an answer. He just thinks if you level up as a man, then all of a sudden we'll get traditional values. No, how is leveling up as a man teaching the women around you to be more traditional? I don't get that.
So then do we need men like Myron? I mean, is hope lost then unless men like Myron repent so that people, like Joe Rogan, well, of course. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. But, if Joe Rogan were to repent and come to Christ, can you imagine the ripple effects that would have on young men? We're just not seeing that. But I mean, is that the only solution? I don't know. What do you think?
I do think, and I'll pass it to Joel in a second here, but I do think that we've just become hyper focused on individuals, and we want, yes, do I think Joe Rogan preaching Christianity on his platform would be amazing? Absolutely. But we're not relying on that. We need churches who are building leaders, who are showing men what it's like to have a wife and kids and to lead them. That's what's going to change. Like, it's not like, could it come from a top-down perspective? Sure. But I think a grassroots, men being taught by other men in their local congregations and being led by other men and leading their households well is what's ultimately going to change this nation.
100%. I totally agree. Local church, the church is God's plan A for world transformation, always has been. Go back to Matthew 28:18-20. The Great Commission has nothing to do with influencers or podcasters. I take that back. It does, insofar as they're fulfilling the mission of the church. Okay, I happen to be a podcaster. I also happen to be someone who I believe is trying to fulfill my piece of the Great Commission. And that is how you do it. It's local churches. Man, if Joe Rogan becomes a Christian, praise the Lord, that'd be amazing. No one knows the effect that would have. We think, yeah, that'd be huge. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. We don't know. If there's one thing we know from Scripture, it's usually God chooses to use the guy you wouldn't expect. God chooses to use the Gideon, who Gideon was not a mighty warrior. He wasn't a massive influencer. In fact, when he enters the story, go back to Judges 4, I believe, or 6, I think it's 4. Gideon is literally hiding from the Midianites in a wine press. He's trying to thresh his grain in a wine press, which is the worst possible place to thresh grain because there's no wind in the wine press. It's underground. So Gideon is this, he's this cowardly, timid guy, and he's the one that God uses against all the odds to make a massive impact. So could Joe Rogan be that guy? Perhaps. But there's just as good of a chance of you or I or your local pastor being that guy, because it's all up to God. So we need to train men. Alex, I love what you said, man. That's what we need to be pursuing, is training up regular men to actually stand on God's word, to pursue biblical manliness. And this is something I thought about a lot as I've written up a rite of passage for my own sons on how to become men. What is it to be a man? What does that actually look like? I've got some things written up about it, but I think that that's got to be the goal. Regular men pursuing biblical, godly manliness.
Yeah, I think ultimately it is a failure of the church. And ultimately, we would probably not see a guy like Myron be so popular if there was a grassroots swelling of biblical men infiltrating society. I think the church over the past 50 plus years has just done a terrible job of discipling men on how to be men. And I think we hit the nail on the head with that one. I think it starts at the local church. We need some transformation there. We need some real discipleship there. And I think you'll see some changes, and then we can no longer have to watch guys like Myron get on stage and embarrass masculinity in what should have been an easy slam dunk debate against two feminists who didn't really know much of what they were talking about. But you can also, find it at your church. You can also find it at the Hammer and Anvil Society. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this debate. It's been real fun. I loved having you guys. This has been fantastic. Thanks everybody out there for watching. If you guys want to promote everything you got going on, now is your chance. Alexx, we'll start with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Love doing this stuff. I have a debate this Saturday, Does God Exist, against Craig from Fight the Flat Earth on Modern Day Debate. I'm also doing a discussion about the argument that I use a lot called the Transcendental Argument of God with David Paulman, who's a Christian. That'll be September 24th. And then on October 4th, I'll have that similar discussion with an atheist by the name of Alexx Malpass. You can get that all on my channel at WiFiGospel.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Jeremiah, I know we don't have time to unpack this, but I would not have said what you just said. I wouldn't have phrased things the way that you said it. And I know this is but there's no time left, so I don't want to push back and open up a whole new can of worms. But I cringe whenever somebody says that the church has failed at something, only because I don't know that we can make that kind of judgment. I think that the church is Christ's bride, and I think that God is using the church. He's working within the church, and yeah, we're going to fall short in many ways, but I trust Jesus to use his church as he sees fit. And I think that the fact that the three of us are having this conversation actually shows the church hasn't failed. It's maybe we're playing catch up in some ways, but like here we all are. We were discipled by somebody, and now we're trying to disciple others. I just have I cringe whenever somebody says, hey, the church has really failed or has done a terrible job. Mostly, and this is not your fault at all, but mostly because that's what people who are deconstructing say. And I like get triggered by that because it's like, get Christ's bride's name out of your filthy mouth. Not you, but like, you understand what I'm saying?
I'll call into your next debate show and we can unpack this even further.
That sounds perfect. All right, let me promote my stuff. The number one thing that I want to promote is the Hammer and Anvil Society. That is our men's fellowship. That's how I know you two guys. That's how you two guys know each other. And that is our venue for helping regular Christian men to become the worldview leaders their families and churches need them to be. And there's a lot of work to do, but by God's grace, it's getting done. And we're seeing guys grow in so many awesome ways, myself included. I mean, it is just awesome to hear the stories about what the Lord is doing. So go check out the Hammer and Anvil Society, thethink.institute/society. And if this is something that you'd like to bring to your church's men's ministry, let me know about that as well. You can reach out through our website because we've got some things for churches that are, I think any pastor listening to this right now who's like, man, I really do want to see the men in my church really step up. We've got resources to help make that happen. And so reach out, let me know.
Beautiful. Yes, folks, you can find me everywhere at Jeremiah Campana. That's YouTube, Rumble, X. You can find my stuff at Christians4Liberty.com. That is the number 4. Folks, thank you so much for watching. If you wouldn't mind bowing your heads with me as I go ahead and lead us out in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for this recording with these two brothers in Christ. Lord, thank you for everybody watching. Lord, we hope that your wisdom came out in this episode, Lord, and that some young men were watching and were convicted and were just inspired to be better men and to dig into the word and learn how to be better men from what how you designed it, Lord Jesus. And we love you, Lord. We trust you. We worship you. And we just give ourselves over to you. And Lord, I just pray that Christians get motivated across this country to speak up in the public squares in ways that they never have before and proclaim your truth loudly and boldly everywhere they go. In your mighty name, I pray. Amen. Folks, Amen. Thank you so much for watching. Jesus and freedom over everything. Until next time, God bless.